me because I told Char. Oh shoot! I hate when it does that.
Oh, we have to consent. Okay.
Yeah. No, it talks to me when it says that. I always like go. No, I told Char I went to line and that's it because that's I'm on. I'm really technically on. After this, I'm on holidays, so it's like yeah.
Hello,
Hey,
Joy.
Joy.
Hey, Joy.
Oh, you're
Hi,
muted.
Catherine. Good to see you.
Yeah. Welcome, Catherine.
Your sound is off. Your mic is off.
Am I still muted?
No,
No,
you're
you're good.
loud and clear, Joy. You sound great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Catherine. Were you able to plug in, Catherine?
No.
Okay.
It turns out we don't have a cable with an ending that fits my computer, so.
Oh, that's okay. As long as well, you're up first. So if you get through your thing and connection go. As long as you can get through your thing and questions and answers, that's all right.
Okay, and I've turned off all of my Wi-Fi devices, and
So you should be fine.
That's good.
Very good.
I think Catherine wins an award. It's a toss-up between Catherine and Jennifer as to who has the most impressive library background.
I know. Well, I don't know. I think Catherine has more books by the looks of it.
Jennifer's got a lot, but Catherine's shelves are even more stuffed.
I'd
That's
have
right.
to move into the real library. This is just an annex.
Oh, wow.
And then
Oh,
there's Ben.
wait.
Yes.
This is
Right.
the overflow.
Hey, okay, sorry guys. Yes, Joy?
I need your help with the sound for a minute. I'm trying to figure a way to play this drum, manage a paper, and be
Okay,
seen at the
go for
same
it.
time. And okay, give me a sec here. It's a huge drum. It's really difficult. Okay.
Go for it.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, good.
To me, it sounded good. I don't know what
I
everybody else.
never
How did
thought
you think,
that
Jacqueline?
Drum
Did it
could be
sound good?
overpowering my voice or vice versa. Thanks.
Okay.
And
Hello,
as long as
Marjorie.
everybody else is muted, the sound
Yeah.
will be pretty good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hello, Marjorie. Happy to have you here as a listener, or
You know, so it's July, and
Jackie, are you gonna read tonight? Sorry,
I
just
am.
got.
I am. I'm sorry, Carl. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Char's emailed me at this time.
Marjorie says hi. Hi.
Hello, Marjorie.
I think Marjorie's just listening tonight because I don't unless it's
Nice.
unless she's coming under
Great
someone else's
listener.
name.
All good.
Fantastic.
So, Carl, will Jackie be reader number 9 then?
She's gonna be 8.
Oh, okay. I've got Vicki as 8, but I'm missing
Oh,
a reader.
did I screw up again? Oh my gosh.
I'm missing a reader 4. So is Joy going
Let's
to
see.
be reader 4?
My list.
I'm
Let's just
often
find my
reading-
list because I
I'm
totally
often-
screwed
I
up
often
here.
remember before.
Jen's first, and then we have Rick if he comes on. He's second. Third is Jennie, or Jennie, sorry, and then Joy, then David, then Catherine, then Vicki.
Okay.
I do screw up a lot. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Carl, was that Rick Collins? Did he get in touch with you?
He did, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping that I emailed him when I got here right away. So
Good.
hopefully he got my email.
Yeah, we tried to get him on. We couldn't get the link this afternoon in the coffee shop. So hopefully, if you were able to send him one.
Yeah, I sent him the stuff, so hopefully he was able to
Good.
get on.
Okay.
Great.
Can I talk to Carl just for a moment? Carl?
Yes, Char.
So reader number 1 is Jan Wenn. Reader 2 is Rick Collins, you said?
Yes.
And reader 3 is Janine, you said?
Yeah.
So reader 4 should be Jacqueline. Jacqueline
Nope.
Carmichael.
No.
5 is Joy Sheldon.
Okay, sorry.
So
Mhm.
Jacqueline, how does number 4 sound to you?
My lucky number.
Woohoo!
Thank you,
Okay.
Char, because I totally screwed up when I was writing it down.
It's
quickly. I was
okay.
trying to write it.
You're jet lagged. I'm here. I'm here for you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Char.
Okay.
for being there for
You
me.
got that, Derek, right? Number 4
Yeah.
is Jacqueline, then Joy, David, Kathleen, and Vicki Drybrough. And then Derek brings up the end.
that.
Sounds good. Also, Carl, did you want to have then a couple of open micers before we go to features? Is that?
Yeah, we'll do the normal.
Perfect. Yep, sounds good. Sounds very good.
Since, I mean, they're just a problem. It's late where they are too, but no, just, that's why I have Jen early, because that way she doesn't want to stay the whole thing, she can go. It is late there. She's our farthest person away right now in time zone wise. I think.
So, and just to clarify, what you've got down as reader number 3, is that Jennie or Janine?
Jennie.
Jennie, okay, good, thank you.
Okay, and we have Joe Lunchbucket is actually here at Char's
Okay.
Lansing, so we'll put him down as number 9.
All right.
Okay. We got this. Okay. Oh, this actually helps.
And I might have to sign off early tonight, but if you've got me as reader number 5, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm trying to put you in early because I know you have trouble sitting for long periods of time.
Rotten back of mine.
Thank you, Jennifer, sorry. I'm calling everybody the wrong name right now. What time? Okay, 6:48, so 7 o'clock is 6 o'clock your time. Okay, got that. Trying to figure all this stuff out here, time-wise.
Well, you guys are going to laugh because after telling you numerous times that I am no poet, I actually wrote a poem. I'm
Well,
actually,
good for you.
but I'll keep the surprise, whichever, for later.
Oh, good for you.
I'm branching out in my old age. I'm branching out.
Well,
Good
that's
on you.
That's a metaphor which you will understand when you hear the poem. Remember the word branching.
well, that's usually what happens when we,
Oh, Carl, you froze.
Am I frozen? Oh, no.
No, you're okay now.
No, you're fine.
You're fine.
Doug, is Marjorie reading tonight?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
I think she's here to hear either you or Benson.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that happens. Char, I got the links up there. You didn't see the links? I should have. I'm hoping I typed it in everybody's. I posted it. It's there somewhere.
Yeah, I can see them.
Good. As long as Bill can see them.
Roll back a ways.
Yeah, and so if instead of writing down, I mean, most people aren't on here, but you can just go and save it. Where the 2 dots are is where you save it, so you can save it at the very end.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. You love listeners. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm not on everybody. I've done it before. I started typing and emailing Char by accident in the chat. I'm like, whoops, supposed to go to everybody.
So how long has the series been going, guys?
It's been pretty good. Really, really good. We've had really excellent readers. I mean, Jacqueline's amazing art. Great. She finds us really interesting people. This is really nice.
We started this series in December, and thank you, Carl. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We've started this series in December. We have been meeting under other configurations, but this was sort of a unique approach to how to deal with the pandemic and to invite people from around the country into our midst. So, yeah.
I really like it because I don't have to drive to Port Alberni and I can wear my pajama bottoms.
There you go. Oh. And behind Char, you'll see our lovely mermaid. That's Luma. That's how we got the name for our group. That's why we call it the Legend Mermaid, because a lovely mermaid behind her.
It is a lovely
Hello,
mermaid.
Heather. Glad to have you as a listener, or You gonna listen or are you reading tonight there, Heather? Right. You're muted.
I am here to listen and admire for a while.
Okay, thank you. We love that. We like
Hello, Hev.
listeners. And
Hi, Kath.
It sounds like Heather's in Winnipeg too.
Vancouver.
And
Oh, you're in Vancouver. Okay, okay. But you know Catherine, that's good.
one of my oldest and dearest friends.
Oh, nice, nice. Always good to have familiar faces in the audience.
yes, we got almost every province covered here. We got BC, Manitoba. We don't have anybody from Alberta yet, but we have Manitoba, Saskatchewan right now.
We got the Western provinces almost
Yeah.
covered.
And we got Ontario, so this is good.
A little short on the Maritimers tonight, though.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's late where they are, so I don't blame them for not.
Mhm.
Time they get on, it'd be like midnight the time they get out, or 1 o'clock.
So how is the fire season in Manitoba this year? It's been pretty bad here in BC lately.
Dry. I don't know if we have fires. Do we have fires, Catherine? I haven't paid any attention.
They haven't made the news because there's so many other places, I think, but we probably do have, some.
Yeah, I know in Alberta when they said coming into Calgary, they were saying it's smoky, and you could smell it coming in through somehow the air going through the plane. You could smell it a bit.
Mm.
It's like, okay, this is not good. You can smell it on the plane.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a long summer in BC. I don't know. It's not starting.
Well, they said it was supposed to rain today on the forecast. It was supposed to rain last night too. 4 days of rain. I'm like, oh, go ahead. I don't care what it does when I leave.
Yeah.
It can rain all at once.
No rain so far. We're doing our little rain dance.
Yeah, I
We're
think
also
everybody wants to
sharing
do
our
that.
smoke across Alberta. I'm
Oh.
sure they love it. Poor them.
Yeah.
I just see we have someone joining us from the Yukon.
Mm.
Ah,
Wow.
So will be the farthest away time zone wise.
No, it's only half an hour.
Well, for the Newfoundland, and it's really, they have their own
Oh,
time zone.
Newfoundland. I thought you said Yukon.
Yukon, yeah. He's Yukon, not Newfoundland. Newfoundland, they have an hour, half an hour.
Yeah,
They have their own time
Newfoundland.
zone.
Newfoundland, boy, that'd be extreme.
Well, they have their own time zone. I don't know about that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
just not, they're just not great. Hello there, PJ Johnson. Welcome to the Electric Mermaid. Glad to have you here as a listener
Or a reader.
or a reader. Sometimes that happens. Some people will come under a different name, and that's one thing about Zoom, right? They'll register under one name and then come on and then sign up, and they come in a totally different name. And you all get confused. Like, who are they?
Might look good. Hello, testing. 1, 2, 3.
We hear you, Rob.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
Hey, PJ
Hey.
Johnson. We got the Yukon with us now. That's great. Good to see
yes, I like this. No, we use Australia or New Zealand. Now, watch I said I watch them come on now.
So if all goes well, we're actually going to be getting together at Char's Landing in the next month. Is this correct? In August, we're going to try? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And
If
do
you-
the
if you
Zoom at the
can.
same time.
Yes, it's gonna be
So-
very interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
it's going to be a bit of a change, but it's going to be fun.
Okay, I'm just gonna interrupt. If anybody wants to read and hasn't signed up, you can just message me privately. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, Derek, Char here, and we're really looking forward to tonight's program, of course. And we've got someone from the Yukon, PJ Johnson. Welcome, and we have so many visitors from all over. It's really quite spectacular. Zoom has opened up our world, hasn't it? But for now, I'm ready to ask everyone to just mute their mics, and I welcome them to keep their videos on. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and have a lovely evening, and thank you all.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Char. Legend Mermaid. MC Derek Hanebury is a Port Alberni writer of poetry, fiction, and creative. He taught writing here at North Island College for many years. He has different books out there. His latest book is The Both Sides Now, his collaboration of short fictions with two of his past students. Take it away, Derek.
Thank you, Karl, for that eloquent introduction, as always. Much appreciated. So welcome, everyone. Really glad to see your smiling faces here tonight, and looking forward to hearing some great readings. And I guess tonight is our mystery night, because we've got two mystery writers featuring, which is really cool. And very well awarded writers that they are too. So really looking forward to hearing what they're going to share with us. So we're coming to you, zooming to you from Port Alberni and the unceded territory of the Sishat and the Hupetcheseth First Nations, to whom we are very grateful that they're sharing their land with us. And Char is our Zoom host, as you probably noticed. Down there at Char's Landing, working the controls and keeping us on track technologically. And if you feel so inclined, there's the etransfer at charslanding.com. You could pay a little bit of money to help support her through this pandemic, and just to help support the Electric Mermaid in what it's trying to do. We are a diverse group of writers and readers that come together here, and we're trying to generate a welcoming environment where people at all levels of writing can feel welcome to come and share their work and listen to each other's work, and get some inspiration to keep on writing. And so far it's been fantastic. Actually, the response has been really good, and I don't know about everybody else, but I look forward to that evening every month when we're going to get together and do this again. So welcome, everyone. And again, etransfer at charslanding.com. Yeah, pay what you can. That'd be much appreciated. And otherwise, let's just settle in and have a good evening of reading and sharing. We're going to do a little.
Just a reminder. I'm sorry, that we're being recorded.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So Char does record this and likes to post it up on YouTube afterwards, and use the odd clip for promotional things. So yeah, that's all good. So let's get started here. We're going to have a couple of our open mic readers to begin, and then we're going to go from there into our two featured readers from Winnipeg. And then we'll go back to some open micers to round the night out. And there's a nice picture of Char's Landing just popped up on the screen that I can see anyway. The building, the cultural hub of beautiful downtown Port Alberni that we've been missing so much for the last year and a half or so. And so it's going to be great to get back there and be together face to face, and to invite the world into the inside of Char's Landing while we zoom from there. So our first reader, excuse me, is going to be Jennifer Wenn. And Jennifer's coming to us from beautiful London, Ontario, the Forest City. Are you going to share some more poetry with us this evening, Jennifer? You'll have to unmute there.
There we go. Bit of local history. This piece was just published. I've put up the link to the piece itself and to my website. So this would be the world premiere performance. And it's called The Ballad of Margaret Murphy. Story. The spring of another century, an ancient land cherished and cared for by First Nations, now flooded by waves of settlers from an ocean away and beyond, British, Irish, and more, all escaping and searching. Upper Canada and the newcomers' parlance, cradled by the Great Lakes, the budding towns, villages, and homesteads of the 1830s ruled by a masculine colonialist elite in distant York, and caught up in the tides of history was an Irish girl named Margaret. Rugged Ireland, the Emerald Isle, home to music, poets, and pride, and even before the Great Famine, home to some lured by opportunity, said to beckon from Upper Canada, including young Margaret, a daughter of the prolific Murphy clan. Fate took her to the heart of the peninsula, an area replete with United Empire loyalists escaping the revolutionary states, Quakers, Baptists, and Methodists seeking freedom of worship, site of Norwichville, boasting a tavern, and so many called the town Sodom. David Hagerman, born in hilly Dutchess County, New York, Francis and 3 daughters, 10, 5, and 1, established in Sodom now, aged 40, a carpenter, a big man in town. This David needed a servant, and Margaret Murphy needed a position. As summer 1837 faded into fall, Hagerman's walls hummed with the master's complaints. The family compact in York control everything. They're corrupt, filched a pile of land hereabouts for the Church of England. Floors, meanwhile, hummed with the relentless swish of Margaret's broom. Just back from Bedford's Inn, David trumpeted. William Lyon Mackenzie in York is the hope. Dr. Duncombe is our man here. We've got the Norwich Political Union now. I'm the quartermaster. We're not letting this stand. And on it went. What next? Wondered Miss Murphy, crouched low, cleaning up the fireplace. Fall wore into winter. December stole in. Rebel officers met at Hagerman's. Nervous whispers of but treason swept aside by glorious cries of taking up arms to help Mackenzie. Duncombe's brigade coming together, and on it went. Trouble, thought Margaret, cleaning up detritus from the great conclave. December 12th, Margaret, remember this day. Cross and Davis wouldn't give up their guns, but we got supplies from Wallace's store. Duncombe has a sword, pistols, and a dagger. Mackenzie's taken York. We are off to capture Brantford. That's all well and good, muttered Margaret, but I'm off to the laundry and linens. It's all fallen apart. We only got to Burford. Mackenzie failed. The Queen's militia is marching. Duncombe is a coward and vanished. Luke Peasley is hiding in a swamp. I can't stay. The loyalists are looking for me. Francis, take care of the girls. Margaret, you are in charge here now. Farewell. Rumors were flying through town. Loyalists said to be on the rampage, not just hunting men on the run, but scavenging for abandoned loot. Brave and hospitable, so ran the Murphy motto. The first part leapt to the fore. The second stepped into the shadows. Floors, fireplaces, and laundry gave way to fearless command. The day well and truly seized. If they're coming, I need to be ready. I think I know where he keeps a couple of convincing helpers. I'll be damned if that rabble gets anything here. Wild Irish shores birthed the Murphy name centuries ago, sea warrior, the noble wellspring. A long way from the coast was Margaret, but the martial blood ran true. A long way from the ocean and no trident here, but a land-bound kindred implement awaited her tenacious grasp. Up strode the mob. Hagerman's gone to ground, easy pickings here. But in the doorway stood an Irish lass, hair billowing, savage look in her eye, 2 pistols stuck in her belt, angry pitchfork primed and ready. By God, you'll get nothing here. Sweet words and appeals to reason availed not, but smirk soon soured to grim realization. Threats beget counter threats, haughty barging in quashed by tines to the throat or a gun barrel to the gut. You can all go to hell, you'll get nothing here. Defeated by implacable feminine will, would-be pillagers slunk off in search of easier plunder, pistols and pitchforks showing them the way, assorted curses ringing in their ears, young Margaret looming triumphant, spear ablaze with history in the moment. The government did change, but not yet. Hagerman caught and tried for treason, acquitted to the shock of many, returning home to an intact house, 30 years of a henceforth peaceful life, and a servant named Margaret, still cleaning, but never the same again. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jennifer. What a great character. Margaret is. Oh my God, formidable. Absolutely. All right, our next reader, and I'm not sure if Rick is here or not.
No, Rick and Jenny are not here, so we'll go right to Jacqueline and then go to the feature readers.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. All right, so Jacqueline's going to be our second reader tonight, and I see you on the big screen there, Jackie. Take it away.
All right. So I am going to read tonight again from my book, Heard Amid the Guns, True Stories from the Western Front, 1914 to 1918. And this was published to very little fanfare because of COVID in 2020, the fall of 2020. So anyway, we hope for some little more exposure this year. And it's a book with many hundreds actually of stories and pictures from the war, sort of like a broad look at World War I. This is called Color Barriers. Who will cut these trees, build this road, lay this track, sling this bridge, defuse those mines, move this ammo dump, battle this explosive fire, dig that trench, take away these bodies? That's the gritty work, the hard, back-breaking labor core, the pioneer toil of war. The recruiters who turned Black Nova Scotians away from the recruiting stations didn't see their Canadianness, which was the same as theirs, just the color of. Come 1915, Canadian enlistees couldn't be refused on account of race. Some commanders welcomed Black volunteers to stand, fight, and fall at Vimy and Passchendaele with their peers, others not so much. In 1915, Lieutenant Colonel George Fowler of the 104th Battalion showed just how far Canada still had to go in civil rights. He tried to discharge 20 Black soldiers on the basis of their color. I have been fortunate to have secured a very fine class of recruits. I did not think it fair to these men that they should have to mingle with Negroes, he wrote in a huff. Though discrimination was entrenched, so to speak, the British needed all hands on deck. Some of the most grueling work of the war went unlauded. Often this unlauded work was delegated to individuals segregated from the fighting soldiers. Construction battalions filled with Indigenous men and African Canadians labored at cutting down trees, laying roads and tracks, and slinging bridges. Additionally, laborers brought in from China had unpleasant and dangerous tasks, diffusing mines, hauling and burying the dead. The time was right for the No. 2 Construction Battalion. It would be Canada's first, last, and only segregated battalion. Chaplain Captain William A. White the Reverend William A. White was the only Black commissioned officer in the CEF compared to 600 Black officers in the US forces, still segregated at that time once America joined the war. The battalion worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, logging and track laying with hand tools in bleak working conditions, sleeping in segregated tents. Cut these trees, build this road, lay that track, sling this bridge, diffuse those mines, move this ammo dump, battle this explosive fire, dig that trench, take away these bodies. The recruiter will see you now. The Black Battalion's nation would recognize their service late. Postage stamp hailed the No. 2 Construction Battalion. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Love the way you bring to light these little known facts of history that have been buried in time. So sweet. You can bring them to the public again. Thank you, thank you. All right, yes, Jackie, and I should have mentioned earlier that Jackie is the artistic director for Electric Mermaid. She is the gal who lines all our featured readers up, and we're ever grateful to her for all the work she does. She writes our press releases and generally I don't know, I think you're the motivating mover and shaker behind the whole thing next to Char. So much appreciated for what you do. All right, so I'm going to put my glasses on this because there's some details that I don't want to miss here when I'm introducing Catherine. And we're really, really glad to have you here with us tonight, Catherine. So Catherine MacDonald is coming to us from Winnipeg, and you've had a career as an archivist, I understand, and then sort of came into the writing a little bit later in your life. So your first mystery novel, Put on the Armor of Light, won the Michael Van Roy Award for Genre Fiction at the 2016 Manitoba Book Awards. And then your next one is So Many Windings, which is forthcoming from At Bay Press, and I'm hoping that that's what you're going to read from tonight. But yeah, all right, that's. So, and I understand you were able to then turn to writing full time, and have been writing full time with the mysteries since then. So, so that's great. And we're set in Scotland for this next novel, which is I can't wait for the Q&A because I'm going to ask you a few questions about what's the Scottish connection, or maybe you want to fill us in with that as you go along here, but how you ended up taking us there, and I'm sure as an archivist you spent a lot of time doing the research on these books, and we'd like to talk about that as well. So what has been said about your writing? MacDonald's eye for period detail is unmatched, and her writing is just flat out terrific. A great engrossing read, said Brad Smith, award-winning author of the Goliath Run. Author Catherine MacDonald says she's had a strange but interesting career as an archivist and freelance historian, during which she came across many odds and ends of details about Winnipeg as it was at the turn of the 20th century. And one morning, she woke up with the idea of stringing some of these odds and ends together into a mystery story. And the result was her first book, Put on the Armor of Light. So really glad to have you here with us, Catherine, and looking forward so much to hearing you read some of your work. So I'll turn the screen over to you, and it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here, although virtually. And as you can tell by my surname, MacDonald, my ancestors are from Scotland, and my father was sort of a professional Scotophile. He had the whole outfit, the kilt, the little daggery thingy and the sock and all that kind of stuff. And we actually we were the only family on our block that had a tartan doorbell. This is a true story. So, it was kind of sort of the identity of Scottishness was really important in my family. And the first book in this series is set in Winnipeg in 1899. And when I came to write the second one, I was very intrigued by the idea of kind of sending my characters to Scotland. Because I knew I was going to be spending several years with the book, and I wanted to be, it to be centered on something that I was interested in to keep up my, my momentum and my interest. So, yeah, sort of like Winnipeg collides with Scotland is kind of a little subtext of the book. I'm going to read a couple of sections from the beginning of the book that kind of set the stage and give you some idea of some of the characters and what the story is going to be about. So just going to start here. I'm going to read from a letter from Charles Lachlan, who's the kind of protagonist of the book. Winnipeg. When he's writing this letter, he's in Edinburgh, and he's writing to his friend Andrew Setter, who's a Winnipeg policeman who is then on sick leave in the Orkney Islands. So this is Charles writing to Setter. We had dinner with the Burning Bush sisters, the Mrs. Thorburn and Miss Gardner mentioned above. All did not go as planned. The sisters are leaving in 3 days on a bicycling tour of the Highlands. They were describing the trip in the most exciting terms, and we were quite enthusiastic on their behalf, until they asked, wouldn't we like to come with them? Maggie, who ignored my kick under the table, said, why, that would be so grand. Another kick. We'd be thrilled, wouldn't we, Charles? Charles did his best to look thrilled. So much for walking arm in arm on Kjorven Hill and intimate suppers at that little restaurant near the grass market. We had one of those conversations while I walked her back to Miss Semple's. Why on earth did you say yes? Well, they took me by surprise and I couldn't say no, and they've been so kind to me, and they're really such dears. And besides, it's only 10 days. Wouldn't you love to see the Highlands from a bicycle? And it will be an adventure, and there'll be no questions about propriety with them there to chaperone us. I ask you, Setter, consider the plight of the engaged man. Did so near, the appointed day so far off. A beautiful old city full of history and romance, especially romance. I suppose it's for the best, but I can't work up much enthusiasm. Say, Andrew, couldn't you be short and join us? I could use another man to even the odds. After all, nothing so rehabilitates an injured leg like trudging a bicycle uphill. And I've got my traveling cribbage set. What do you say? If necessary, I could drag you in a cart behind. Yours in supplication, Charles Lachlan. And I'm going to skip a little bit forward in the action.
Catherine, if I could just jump in there. I don't know if it's when you move your book on your desk or whatever, it makes quite a fairly loud scraping noise.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so maybe just try and keep
Let
it
me
up.
just try and adjust it a little bit here.
Sure. I just don't want to miss any of your words there.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Going on. Charles and Maggie walked up the steps of the house in Green Hill Gardens and knocked using an immense door knocker that seemed to be made from the horseshoe of a Clydesdale. They were to have dinner with the sisters, receive final instructions on the itinerary of the bicycle tour, and contribute a parcel of clothing each to the communal steamer trunk that was to precede them via rail and coach and be there waiting for them at their inns and hotels. Invigorating day of cycling. The sisters' solicitor father had worked primarily for an eccentric Glasgow steel industry magnate who, being a bachelor, left all his money to his faithful legal advisor. Since Mr. Gardner was already comfortably fixed at the time of this generous bequest, he became a very rich man indeed. But rather than build or buy an estate in the country, he decided instead to build this behemoth of a house in the Edinburgh neighborhood where he had lived since his marriage. Perhaps this was to honor the memory of his late wife, who had died young and left him to raise their daughters on his own. The girls had taken over the running of the house as soon as they reached their late teenage years. First Janet, and then the younger sister Annie, running the house unlike her sister. The heavy oak door swung inward, and Charles and Maggie were greeted by a small gray-haired woman in an apron and cap. Good evening, Mr. Lachlan, Miss Skeen. I'll take your hat, sir, and your bundles too, miss. I'll be packing. I hope we're not late, Emmy, Maggie said as they stepped up into the entrance into a richly carpeted hallway. We walked in order to enjoy the evening. Son, the ladies are expecting you, but at this she peered around at the double doors to the library, which were closed, but they're entertaining a foreign gentleman who seems to be staying a little beyond his time. A hall, through a vast sitting room full of overstuffed furniture, and through a set of French doors that led to the conservatory at the back of the house. If you'll just wait here, I'll bring some refreshments, Emcee said. Presently, I'm sure. The conservatory was filled with palm trees and other exotics, many of which the sisters had acquired from Palestine and from Egypt. 2 lemon trees with bright green, shiny leaves and fruit that was just beginning to ripen grew in enormous pots. This ample greenery was sustained by the warm, moist air provided by a hard-working boiler and a set of radiators that clanked periodically and hissed with steam. In front of a set of French doors leading out to the back garden, there was an open area where a metal rack holding a set of Indian clubs, a rubber floor mat, and other physical culture apparatus was set up. By the scuffs and scratches on the equipment, Charles and Maggie could tell that it was well used. Charles grabbed a skipping rope off the rack and began to whirl it around, alternately skipping and getting the rope caught in his ankles. Maggie watched this performance with some amusement. She was glad Charles liked the sisters, for she was very fond of them herself. She'd first met them in Berlin during a lecture by Professor von Harnack on the nature of Christ. Maggie had been seated behind them and heard their soft Edinburgh burr. Since there were few other women in the hall, she sought them out during the break. They seemed quite charmed by the idea that she'd come all the way from Winnipeg to study in Germany, where they were themselves spending the winter months. They were cultivating contacts among the biblical scholars and attending lectures at which, as Maggie also discovered, ladies were not always welcome. You had to develop a thick skin over things like this, which Maggie felt she was doing. But when the sisters took her under their wing, inviting her to their flat frequently and on outings like bicycle trips through the countryside, she accepted this maternal treatment gladly. Charles was now attempting to chin himself on a high bar apparently set up for that purpose. After the 3rd clean repetition, he began kicking his legs frantically to assist in getting his chin up over the bar, and Maggie called out encouragement between giggles. Emcee returned with a green concoction served in crystal wine glasses and a plate of small biscuits spread with an unidentifiable paste. She set the glasses and plate on an oval-shaped wicker table, surrounded by that would not have been out of place on a balcony in Cairo. Charles dropped to the floor with a sharp exhalation of breath, shook the fatigue out of his arms, and joined Maggie at the table. As she got to know the sisters better, Maggie could not believe her good fortune in finding such compatible friends. Like her, they had lost. Then the death of their father when they were in their early 20s deepened the already close bond between the sisters. They were parted briefly when Janet had married, set up house in England with her new husband, only to endure his sudden illness and death. Since then, Janet Thorburn and Annie Gardner had lived together in the house in Greenhill Gardens, pursuing their interests in women culture. They were especially interested in the study of New Testament manuscripts, which they furthered with hard work and determination, utilizing their complementary talents and their considerable fortune. After Charles and Maggie had sat in the conservatory for more than 20 minutes, Janet and Annie burst in, overflowing with apologies. "So sorry we've kept you waiting. Are you almost perishing with hunger? Really, that man." "That foreign gentleman," Charles said. "Yes, Mr. Radulescu. He's a dealer in antiquities," Janet said. "We met him in Egypt last year. We bought some excellent items from him, though what he had on offer was rather mixed," Annie said. "Quite interesting Coptic papyri and some obviously overpriced rubbish. We've learned to be very careful. Not like some of those American gentlemen who come into the Khan el-Khalili market in Cairo and scoop up job lots full of items indiscriminately," Janet said. "Was he trying to interest you in another manuscript?" Maggie asked. "No, not at all," Annie said. "In fact, he was trying to buy back one of ours, a fragment that we bought from him last year." "Yes, and he was quite insistent," Janet said. "His price, but we told him in no uncertain terms that after we publish our facsimile edition, we're going to donate the manuscript to New College Library." But never mind that for now. Bring your kale and carrot juice with you to the dining room, Annie said. Charles, who had been prevented by Maggie from watering the palm tree with the contents of his glass, dutifully picked it up and followed the ladies into the dining room. That's it. So that sort of sets the stage for the book.
Wonderful. Yeah, some great characters taking shape there. I can just imagine how they're going to interweave as the story goes on. Fabulous. So we're going to open it up for some question and answer, if you're comfortable with that, just for a few minutes, and see if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask you. I'm interested about the research that you did for this novel. Did you do a lot of background reading? I mean, coming with a Scottish background, that must have helped, but did you have to go beyond that?
Not a whole lot, but having Scottish friends helped. So we were able to go, my husband and I, to Scotland and, you know, sort of sponge off friends while I did research in the National Library of Scotland for a week, doing research on things like, you know, the golden age of the bicycle in Scotland and what amazing things Scots did on their bikes in that period. So that was great. But I mean, the internet is such an amazing resource. You know, I was able to buy on Abe Books travel literature from the period, you know, about 1900, you know, guidebooks to traveling in Scotland that told me a whole lot of details that would have been impossible to find any other way. How much hotels cost, which hotels were temperance hotels, because my little group was teetotalers and they stayed only at temperance hotels. So there was a lot of stuff, and crazy people strap cameras to their cars and bicycles and go down the roads that I was really interested in seeing. That, you know, so that's a tremendous resort. Google Street View is amazing too. But we did drive the route of the bicycle tour, which was good, and took photographs, and I took notes and geographic kind of notes. So I did end up doing a lot of research and loved it. I love research, and kind of probably did a little too much, probably did enough for about 3 books, but it was all great fun.
Fantastic. That sounds wonderful. Does anyone have a question out there in the audience? Joy, go ahead.
Yeah, unless I missed it. Did you try to write much Scottish dialogue? I wrote a children's book called The Story of Roger Hardfoot, and I found the toughest thing to write was the dialogue spoken by the Scottish fur trapper. Did you do any Scottish dialogue for yours? And trying to figure out how to spell it.
I wrote my dialogue of Scottish characters with great trepidation. That made me very nervous. I tried to restrict myself to only about 5 uses of the word we, you know, W-E-E, in the book, because you know, it would have been every second word just out of sheer nervousness, right? It helps to have Scottish friends. So I've been listening to them and kind of cribbing a few things, and I had books on Scottish and those sorts of things. I tried to make their language very plain, and I did have an editor who is Scottish look at the book, and so if there was anything that really clanged, this editor was going to hopefully find it and, you know, tell me that no Scot worth his salt would be saying anything like that. So yeah, it was an adventure. It was a linguistic adventure for sure.
It was for me too. I took the passages over to an old Scottish neighbor. He happens to be 96, but he's still very mentally sharp. And I had him read them to me. And then I tried to come up with a system to try and spell what he was saying to me. So I think it turned out okay. Luckily it was for kids, so if there's a few flaws and they won't notice, but I agree it was a real challenge trying to write it in the dialect.
sure.
What's coming up next for you, Catherine?
Well, I'm working on the third book in the series, and I'm also writing another book at the same time, which is probably a mistake, but it seems to, both of those books seem to want to be written, so I'm doing them in tandem.
Wow.
Yeah, but the third book will be back in Winnipeg, and it will be a winter book. The first book was the summer book, and the middle book is the Scotland book. A series about Winnipeg without having a winter book, so it will feature curling.
Great. Somebody gonna get killed with a rock?
I haven't figured that one out yet. I think it's entirely possible, but
So the other book that you're writing in tandem with the third one in this series, is it another work of fiction as well then, or is it?
yes, it's a standalone book set in Winnipeg in 1946, and it's based on a real incident. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Fascinating. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, thanks for having me. That's great.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any last questions before we move on? Yeah, we're all good. Okay, hearing no or seeing no hands raised or anything in the chat box, we'll move along. Thank you so much for that, Catherine, and appreciate you staying up a little bit later to be with us and sharing that little taster of the novel. It really set the stage there. It's beautiful. All right, and I'm going to put my glasses back on to introduce our next featured reader. That would be Doug Whitney, who is also in Winnipeg and who writes under the pen name of C.C. Benison. And another mystery writer. It's interesting that Winnipeg is breeding these mystery writers. On those long winters, you can, because mysteries, you have to really calculate out the plot, I would think, and you need time to sketch that out. Anyway, that Buckingham Palace won the Arthur Ellis Award for Best First Novel and was followed by others in Her Majesty Investigates series. I thought, what a fantastic series, right? Her Majesty Investigates. Who could turn away from that? He followed that series with the Father Christmas Mysteries, featuring as amateur sleuth the vicar of the English village of Thornford Regis, Tom Christmas. And titles include 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, and 10 lords leaping. So that's great. You can do the whole 12 days of Christmas, right? And his most recent novel is Paul is Dead, a psychological thriller. And his new work is a novella, Father Christmas and the Unpleasantness at the Battle of Thornford. And so I'm going to let you take it away, Doug. And I'm hoping that you're going to read from what you're working on, but maybe you got a favorite from something earlier, so that's all up to you.
I'm going to read from the past. I'm going to read from The Unpleasantness.
Okay.
The Battle of Thornford.
Sounds good. Enjoy.
Well, yes, you mentioned that this is sort of, this would be after 10 Lords of Leaping and before 9 Ladies Dancing, if I ever get around to writing 9 Ladies Dancing. So this is just a little shorty. You'll meet Tom Christmas, who's the vicar of Thornford Regis, and his housekeeper, Madron. These are the two characters, and I'll just read the first chapter. That should be enough of a setup. Otherwise, I'm giving it away in a novella. It's so short. All right. It occurred to Tom Christmas that some country events were really very odd. This one in particular, he thought, surveying the costumed folk wandering about Hailstone Field. He'd been called upon to lend his vicarly presence to Thornford, which had been fought in 1645 between the usual suspects, the Royalists and the Parliamentarians, in the Civil War. The battle had taken place in December and the reenactment in August, when the kids were off school and the weather more likely favorable, suggested that this was no zealous approach to capturing authenticity. Madron, his redoubtable housekeeper, proclaimed the Battle of Thornford a shining beacon in the history of the county, but Tom, glancing through regional history's previous incumbents at parked in the vicarage study, was hard-pressed to find mention of it other than a footnoted reference in one tome to a short engagement in a field between the village of Hamlin Ferrers, which stood for Parliament, and nearby Thornford, which stood for the King. It appeared to be rather less a battle than a skirmish, or perhaps an incident, or really little more than an unpleasantness, as the weary locals dragged themselves out for a final bash at one another in the protracted war that divided England in the 17th century. The reenactment was, of course, a fundraiser with money shared between charities of the two villages. On the periphery of the field were the customary delights to relieve the hoi polloi of their pounds and pence. But the central event was the recreation of the historic clash with floppy-hatted cavaliers to one side and saucepan-helmeted roundheads to the other. Tom should have been alerted by the unusual show of force by St. John ambulance on the periphery of the makeshift car park, or by the slipping away as the hour approached of mothers with young children, but he wasn't. He didn't recognize many of the Thornfordites and wondered that the village had so many big, fit lads. Saying so to Barbara Coker, the new vicar of All Saints in Hamlin, a spinster as tightly buttoned up as her cassock, who cast him an ambiguous glance and said nothing. He had expected some sort of choreographed spectacle with cannon, muskets, and pikes, and with period dress and royalist gleam and Puritan drab. He had seen one on TV, and it was quite grand with lots of swaggering and shouting and gunsmoke, fake of course, and noble horses. But it was quite silly too, what with the dead as such rising from their eternal slumber to bow before a captivated audience. But the reenactment of the Battle of Thornford was little different than a pub crawl. Participants were minimally costumed, horses there were none, and armaments there were few, a pike here, a musket there. After a short communion service from the two vicars, the unpredictable English sky let loose a brief barrage of rain, while each side set on the other with a fearsome roar, struggling in the churning mud, fists and feet the weapons of choice. Startled out of his skin, Tom shot forward to enter the melee, to try and put a stop to the brutality. But one of the St. John ambulance grabbed his arm and said in a thick West Country accent, "You never mind, Vicar, you let them lads have at it." And he did, as options were none. The onlookers, including the Vicar of Hamlin, cheered and booed with gusto, and before long, Tom felt himself unmoored from the bonds of adult decorum, slipping back to an adolescent self where schoolyard altercation stoked primitive bloodlust. His own response horrified him, and this was only partly mitigated when he realized, and this was partly confirmed by others later, that reenactors are mostly ringers, enthusiastic amateur pugilists happy to be proxies in this peculiar local catharsis. Even now, more than 3.5 centuries after the Civil War, some of the older residents of Thornford still dismissed the yeomanry of Hamlin Ferrers as roundheads. Memory ran deep in the countryside. Tom returned to the vicarage late that afternoon in a state of profound unhappiness. He found Madeleine in the kitchen removing a gooseberry tart from the aga. She glanced at him over the tops of her glasses, frowned, and reached to put the kettle on the hob. She had come to know her employer's deep silences, pretended some sort of crisis, spiritual or otherwise, but it was often a task in bottling the bottled up details. Mr. Christmas prized circumspection and disdained anything he considered tittle-tattle. Madeleine considered this a most unwise and impractical approach to village life. A nice cup of tea, she thought, might loosen his tongue. "Did you find the battle to your liking, Mr. Christmas?" she asked lightly, opening a tin of lemon biscuits. "I most certainly did not. I can't think the last time I witnessed such an appalling spectacle." "Well, I grant it is a little rough around the edges," Madeleine said. "When I was a girl—" "Rough around the edges," Tom interrupted, absently taking a brisk biscuit. "Mrs. Prowse, someone died at this year's Battle of Thornford." "But Mr. Christmas, many of them die. It is a battle after all." No, I mean die as in," Tom groped for an explanation, "as in cease to be, life force vanished, meet your maker, that sort of thing." "You mean someone died?" "Got it and won. But how? It's awful. Someone was stabbed with a pike." "In the battle?" "No, that's the odd part." Tom bit into the biscuit. "After the battle, if you can call that fracas a battle." Barbara stumbled across this poor man behind the trees off the car park in Orchard Wood. You might know Barbara, vicar of All Saints. She was in the woods to, well, never mind. Let's say that the beverages were copious and the portal was insufficient. Anyway, everyone seemed to want to call it an accident. "Well, people do stab themselves, Mr. Christmas," Madeleine said. "I remember when—" "Yes," Tom interrupted again, "people do stab themselves, I'm sure, but not with a pike. Pikes are 10 feet long at the shortest." "They are pointed at one end with metal," Madeleine observed, "but you'd have to run at it. or fall on it. Is that possible? Tom asked rhetorically. He considered the placement of the body when he'd gone to look and shuddered in memory. The man was pinned to the ground at the neck. The steel point and part of the staff were ripped through his flesh and pointed at the sky. The rest of the staff broken beneath his body. Blood pooled like a crimson nimbus around his head. It was a ghastly sight. I think they're calling it an accident because no one wants to credit that it may not be an accident. They don't want health and safety to shut the reenactment down for good, and it should be shut down. Madron lifted the teapot. Who was it who died? That's another odd bit. No one seemed to know at first, but then most of the reenactors didn't seem to belong to either village. It was quite peculiar. King or Parliament? Madron poured the tea. The deceased? Parliament. He was wearing one of those pot helmets over his head. Hamlin then, Madron said. He would be connected to Hamlin Ferrers. If any of them were connected to anything, Tom lifted the teacup to his lips. Finally, some kid in a cavalier hat gave me a name. Madron picked up a biscuit and regarded him with avid curiosity. Well, Tom said, I suppose it will be public knowledge before long. Oddly, the name clanged a bell, but perhaps it's because the name sounds like yours, Mrs. Prowse. The poor man's name was, let me think, Charles Rouse. Tom observed the biscuit stop halfway to Madron's mouth. Charles Rouse? Charlie Rouse? Clanging a bell for you too? Yes. Which bell then? My brother's brother-in-law is named Charles Rouse, Maureen's brother. Oh, Tom observed a paleness settle on his housekeeper's face. But, she continued, he hasn't been seen in 8, 9 years. It can't be an uncommon name, Mrs. Prowse. There may be several Charles Rouses about. What did he look like, she asked. Tom thought back. He was quite tall for one thing, or would have been had he been standing. The helmet obscured much of the man's head. In the horror of the moment, he only took a quick glimpse of the face below. Thinnish, narrowish, a bit pointy at chin and nose, hardly a round head. Eye shot, so no salient detail there. Late 40s, early 50s? It was a rough guess. He gave an edited version to Madron. I shall have to tell Jago, she said. Your brother? Tom watched with perplexity as Madron's eyes darted to the kitchen telephone. Then you're certain this is your Charles Rouse? Certainly not my Charles Rouse, Mr. Christmas, but it's certainly that Charles Rouse. Can you be sure? The Charlie Rouse who lived at Hamlin Ferrers was very fond of two things. One of them was the Civil War, mad about reenactments and such. Oh, Tom said, and what was the other? Madron's lips drew to a pinch. I can't say. Say two.
That left me hanging.
Oh, good. That's what first chapters are supposed to do.
Absolutely.
Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's throw it open to some questions here. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask, just let me know. And I'll start it out maybe by just asking you, is there any basis in reality for this particular reenactment that you're drawing on, or is this completely a fictional creation of you?
It's completely fictional. I ended up looking at YouTube videos for reenactment. But somebody did tell me after reading it that they had been to a reenactment in England and it was rather less lovely than the ones on YouTube, where it was a bit of a hodgepodge or a melee.
Bit of a brawl.
A bit of a brawl, yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's not beyond belief that people would just come together and have a yearly fight and then all go to the pub afterwards and talk about it. I don't
Farces.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any questions out there they'd like to ask Doug? Yeah, go ahead,
Sure.
Jackie.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're developing and when you're keeping a character going book after book, what does it take to develop a character that people want to follow? And what are some of the challenges of that?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there are challenges keeping it fresh. One thing is to give the character a lot of backstory and a kind of a situation that is at least a little bit dynamic. Tom Christmas in this is a widower, for instance, and his wife has been murdered. That is yet to be resolved. So that has some momentum, that keeps it going. And then there's all the evolving relationships with other people in the village and his own search for Mrs. Christmas number 2, that kind of thing. So
Great.
there's probably more, I just can't think of it.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I would think having that protagonist who's going to carry on, you've got your main character there. That is a big leg up, I would think, in terms of you already have a very good sense of who he is and how he speaks and everything behaves. So you can, then build on that. I think it would probably, in some ways, make it easier to carry the series on, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any subplots interwoven? Like, is that part of how you do what you do?
Yeah, kind of. There's I was sort of thinking of as A and B story. The A story is the crime and the solving of the crime. The B story is all the different things with relationships throughout the story, and those evolving relationships, other arguments, other conflicts, that kind of thing.
Great.
Yeah. And how did you find your way into mystery writing? I mean, were you an avid mystery reader before and just thought, oh, I'll try this on my own, or?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I read Agatha Christie and all the Golden Age ones when I was a kid, and at a certain point, I thought, well, I might try one. And yeah, it seemed like kind of a logical step into writing fiction because it has structure, it has a backbone. So, yeah, well, write what you like to read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you have other any other projects that aren't related to this character?
Yeah, I'm finishing, hoping to finish one this fall set on the West Coast, believe it or not, on Salt Spring Island.
Ah.
So.
Is that the psychological thriller, or is that one done?
Well, it's sort of a bit between. It's not as cozy as these Father Christmas ones, but not quite as psychological thriller-ish as the Paul is Dead novel, which is a bit of a blacker or a bit of a darker novel than the other stuff I write. So.
Okay, great. All right. Anyone else have a question out there? No. All right. Oh, just seeing hand up from Carl. Is that clapping?
Yes, that's clapping.
That's applause. Okay. All right. We'll give some applause. Then. Thanks very much, Doug. That was most enjoyable, and appreciate the answers to the questions as well. So let's go back into our open micers then and move along. And I think I see next on my list we have Joy Sheldon. And I think Joy is going to play some drum for us tonight, as well as sing or read. I'm not sure quite what. Always a welcome surprise, whatever she brings.
All of it. Can you hear me okay?
You bet. Sounds fine.
Okay, so I was out watering my yard the other day and at my side hedge watering and talking to my trees, as I often do. And I told you folks that I'm no poet, but a line from an old musical came to me, and I've used it to head a poem. The lyrics were sung by Clint Eastwood in Paint Your Wagon in 1969. Clint Eastwood, of all people, I never even knew he was a singer. The poem stands, I hope, as a metaphor for life. And I'm going to incorporate it into my senior smorgasbord anthology, which I hope to publish in the fall. And the poem is titled, I Talk to the Trees. I talk to the trees, but they won't listen to me. I talk to the trees, but they won't answer. I talk to the trees, but they won't listen to me. I talk to the trees, but they won't answer. Oh, yes, they will, but we have to pay attention to them. Douglas fir, whispering down in all his silent majesty from behind my house. He speaks of the value of not speaking, of enduring in quiet silence while learning to listen, listen, listen. Dougie, his little son, standing beside him, sheltered protectively under his father's massive arms. He speaks to me of new life, new energy, new hope. Sidara, Mother Cedar, on the other side, wearing her fluffy sweater and fuzzy skirt, reminding me of times gone by. Crinolines dancing in French cabarets. We must think of the past and all it has to teach us. Next to Sidara, a massive maple, its knotty branches leaf flooding my back lawn every autumn. In between, her teenage daughter, Cassie, sandwiched among the adults, her ever-questioning presence an intrusion on my mini forest, but reminding us that we must never cease to question. Why are we doing this? How can we do it better? And the biggest question of all, why are we here? To the left of my house stand 4 small sentinels, the Pyramid Alice, who will bear witness to any property invasion. We must learn from the armaments escalations, the wars, the gang threats, and try to prevent them. Then above them, on a rise, the growing poplars, evidence of Mother Nature's sassy presence. My neighbor took out the trees years ago, creating an open space, an invasion of my much-sought privacy. But Mother Nature accommodated, bringing me new trees to fill the space, better and prettier ones than I would have thought to plant, fitting perfectly in that space, their willowy presence a delicate contrast to the big firs. Luckily for him, my neighbor's dead now, as he would not be happy at her cheekiness. Auntie Arbutus and Dolores Dogwood, down at the front, recently lost to sidewalk construction. But I made them get special permission to kill off Dolores. Heh heh. So my forest has endured since 28, when fire raged, proud witness to time's passing. Every year it changes. New family members appear and old ones die off, or are taken down for fire safety, or to create space for new life. And so must we to be stewards of our planet, not filling more spaces than we can adequately fill, removing the old, the dead, and the useless, and filling their space with new and vibrant life. Life with new ideas, new hope, a new capacity for survival. And my best hope is that when it is my time to go, I'll be able to say goodbye to my tree family and wish them the best as I pass through to the other side.
Great, thank you, thank you. That was nice. And nice, yeah. Nice to have some musical part to your reading as well. That added a lot. Sweet. Yeah, the trees, they certainly have their personalities, don't they? We just tend to ignore listening to them and paying attention. And if we do, yeah, it's amazing what they can tell us for sure. Sweet, Joy, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go on to David Kippling next, and David is one of our spotlit open mic readers tonight, so he's got a 10-minute slot. So he gets to stretch his wings a little bit more and give us a longer piece, I think. And just unmute yourself there, David, and we're looking forward to, there we are.
Right. You know, John Gielgud was once asked his opinion, what is a good director? He said, a good director is someone who shines a very bright spotlight on me.
There you go. Well, that bright one is shining on you now, David.
Okay.
Okay.
Rachel halted at the end of Huskisson Street to gaze down at the towering mass of the Anglican Cathedral. A newcomer to Liverpool, she was roaming its neighbourhoods whenever Tariq was putting in overtime at the Goodyear Labs. Tariq Chowdhury was Liverpool born and had warned Rachel back in their college years that his faith rested on the bedrock of inorganic chemistry, not on the planet's rabble of bickering religions. Besides, his parents had loathed the Anglican busybodies who had pestered their native madras back in the day. Rachel's survey instruments were locked up at work, but her eyes could test Tarek's latest hometown boast, that it was the biggest cathedral in England. The cathedral squatted in open ground like 3 gigantic blocks of stone dropped onto the groaning earth. Its soaring dark brown walls and central tower spoke grimly of work and weight and endurance, and less of the godliness that Rachel had been expecting. Its hard outlines seemed to challenge whatever the North's climate could throw at it. "A brute, isn't it?" asked a voice behind her. "Millstone grit and red sandstone and God knows how much mortar." Rachel looked around. His grubby cloth cap and stubble of white hair barely came up to her shoulder. Rachel could not get used to feeling so tall among the older people of this city. "I've never seen it before," she explained, shivering in her winter coat. "It's certainly, well, big." "You don't have to be polite, miss. It's a brute of a building. Excuse me for butting in. My handiwork's right there, a lifetime of it, and it draws me back from time to time." His nose was broken, but his face was altogether one smile from eyebrows to chin. Rachel liked him on the spot. "You worked on it? What was your trade?" "I started at 15, humping buckets of mortar along the scaffolding. Learned a bit of bricklaying. Then I tried out for a mason. Pestered the stonemasons, practiced, got to know the ropes. I could cut and shape the stone, no problem, but it was the heights that did for me. The heights and the weather, and some of it was the deaths." Rachel raised an arm at the massive square central tower. "Wasn't it all done by cranes and machinery?" "Bless you, of course they had cranes. But when a block of stone is raised, it needs a man, a strong young man, perhaps a foolish one, to guide the stone in with both hands. And that means he's no hands for himself. May God look after Tim Connolly. A wicked wind off the river that morning. Tricky, sneaky winds blow round that tower. Sudden they are. And Tim looks right at me as he's teetering. Me hugging the scaffolding for dear life. He looks right at me, not 10 feet away. And he says, 'Jimmy,' just that. 'Jimmy,' he says, voice kind of high like a girl, you'll excuse me. And he's gone, tumbling like a little doll. I was about 30 back then, and that finished me for the high scaffolding." Rachel wanted to lay a gloved hand on the old man's worn sleeve. "Dear Lord, you must have been brave to keep working after that, after all that. Lucky is what I was to have any work in those days. That cathedral was my whole working life, me and a fair few more. Started at 15, retired at 65, and you know what? The bloody thing still wasn't finished. Excuse my French." Rachel looked again at the huge edifice. "How long were they building it?" The man chuckled. "You know the Catholic cathedral up in Mount Pleasant, that modern thing? That went up in 15 years. This one, my building, 74 years it took. That's what you're looking at there." "It's impressive," consoled Rachel. "I mean, kind of brooding, looking over the rooftops." "Impressive, but not what you call joyful, not uplifting, is it? Look at it, cold as a banker's heart. We used to say that, laying the flagstones on the floor of that great nave in winter, colder than a banker's heart. They've never been able to warm it, never, no matter what they do. It's a chilly place for man or priest. It frees the soul of a saint, so help me." Without asking each other, the pair began to walk down the wide slate steps towards the massive semicircular porch. Rachel told the man she'd a neighbour back home in a village who worked in limestone, quarrying and milling. That Lofty Ferris loved the stone and the work, knew it inside out. "Ah, that's a sweet stone, the limestone. Smooth as a lady's face powder. We had a harsher job on our hands. Red sandstone and that devil's millstone grit, they can wear a man away. Limestone's the thing for carving. It's just marble, same thing." "Is it?" Rachel asked. "I thought marble was hard." Her companion chuckled again. "Marble is just harder limestone. But you know that Michelangelo, those statues of his, just like skin and muscle they are. And what about Bernini, his David, the one with the slingshot? Have you seen the pictures? Folks don't like to stand in front of that one for fear they hit them. You can only do that with marble." Rachel's sideways glance made the old man grin. "Funny, eh, little scouser like me, no education, ugly face, yeah, working man. That's what you thought, right? Michelangelo, Bernini, none of my business." "No, not at all," Rachel stammered. "It's just that Italy's a long way away, and right, Michelangelo, Bernini, sorry, that was hundreds of years ago." Excuse. The man spoke eagerly. "That fella you said, him in the limestone quarry. I bet he'd look at a Michelangelo carving and he'd know the feel and the fault lines in it and what it took to carve it, wouldn't he, if he's like you said? Rachel grinned. Oh yes, Lofty would touch it and even sniff it if I know him. Maybe wet a finger and taste it too. I caught him doing that one time. Of course he would, of course he would. Look, I'm being rude here. I never said, Jimmy Grogan, that's me. Did you think I was Irish? People do, but I was born a mile from this very spot, a Liverpudlian, a Scouser, that's me. Now, if Bernini was to jump up out of his grave and catch a train to Lime Street Station and let Jimmy Grogan show him a Virgin and Child we have in there, in the Lady Chapel, yeah, Protestants have Lady Chapels too, show him a Virgin and Child that a Yorkshireman cut from a great statue of red sandstone off the moors. Bernini would look at that statue, cause and electric grinders minus are only 20 years back. He'd know by instinct the kind of man that carver was. Am I talking too much? Rachel shook her head. No, no, I believe you. They stepped together into the gloom of the cathedral nave as though into a subterranean cavern. In the side chapel, a brave and brooding woman from the north of England hunched her strong shoulders to keep the wind and rain from her little boy. The young boy stared out patiently at Rachel and Jimmy, waiting. Jimmy murmured, "Look at them, they're determined, aren't they? Sit there 1,000 years if they have to. They're not giving up." The mother's exposed hand was hard-bitten, weather-beaten, as though gnarled from house and farmyard chores. Jimmy went on, "You know what? The man who carved this had it sent here in a big truck, heavy-duty crane and all, and the diocese chap, the big holy fella, had it just dumped in an old builder's hut outside. For months and months it was, had it kept out of sight, till he decided, in his own sweet time, when he put on a fancy ceremony to install it. It can be difficult, you know, churchmen. The stone carver only just made it. Came here in a hospital van on the day, in a wheelchair, oxygen, everything, under a red blanket. They say he died just afterwards. I did not take to that diocese man, and I can tell you more." Rachel pointed to an oak pew, and they sat in the gathering cold, and she thought of a gravestone behind the church back home. Mr. Grogan looked both ways and murmured, "My wife passed away before I retired. Now, we were doing some stone mouldings around the north wall at the base when Jessie died, so I thought of doing something for her. I told the bishop, just to be open about it, I might slip her ashes into the mortar where we were working. Nothing to see, just in with the mortar. And that bishop gives me a dressing down. Can you imagine? Me in my 60s with all my time here and him a soft chap in his office. He says, "No, not appropriate, Mr. Grogan. Appropriate." I can see his lips. Appropriate. I'm sorry it upset me. Well, I finished my year out. My last day, some of the men and women too. By then there were women working here, in trades, women. Well, you know all that. They bought a bit of cake and a couple of bottles to see me off. And this bishop, the same one, he slides up to me all sympathy about the building regulations and protocols and so on, and inquired about my Jessie's resting place. "Oh, don't you trouble yourself, sir. The good Lord knows where she sleeps. She's in good hands, I think, in an appropriate place." And I walked away. Good man, smiled Rachel, rubbing her hands and nodding. And he continued in a murmur, "I let you into a little trade secret among masons. I'm not alone, not by a long way. There's all sorts in the walls of any cathedral, all respectful and no harm done. And I reckon God winks his eye and understands it better than a boatload of bishops." Rachel did touch the man's sleeve. "Mr. Grogan, you've been very kind. I have to get going now, but thank you ever so much. It's been such an eye-opener hearing about your work. And I'll make sure to tell my old neighbour about it too, the limestone man, back home. Goodbye now." Rachel walked stiffly back up the wide steps to Huskisson Street in the chilling late afternoon. Smoke from autumn bonfires in allotments across the river caught in her throat and made her think of year's end and rest. A thin mist moved under the yellow street lamps coming on, and in the headlights of a slow bus as it brought shoppers and workers back home to these Victorian streets. She'd tell Tarek all about it when she got home.
Superb. Thank you, David. That was great. That was great. As always, I love the way you tell a story with so much dialogue, and it's such natural dialogue, and it's just spellbinding the way you drag us in there and weave that story around. Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, then I guess we're gonna pass it on to Kathleen to take it over from there on the same screen. Just shuffle over on the couch.
Okay.
Kathleen, are you gonna read more of what you've been working on or something new? Or
Yeah.
what?
I had a message to Karl and I didn't get an answer, so I'm going to go with the short one, right, Karl?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anne woke up so happy. July and a holiday and fireworks and fun. After breakfast, Anne's father brought out the first firework. Anne looked down at the flat rock as her father lit a tiny black stump with a match. She watched as it grew straight up and then flopped over to curl round and round, squirming just like a real snake. Anne loved garter snakes and frogs. Her sister Margaret said that touching a frog could cure warts. But Anne, unlike the witch in the Wizard of Oz, didn't have any warts. But still, she touched a frog whenever she could because it felt good. Then Tommy showed Anne how to take a whole roll of caps and hit them really hard with a rock so that they would all go off bang, 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 instead of one at a time like with her Annie Oakley gun. Next, Anne's father came out with the .22 rifle and set up some tin cans on a stump at the edge of the woods to teach Tommy how to shoot. Anne watched, listening carefully. "Let me try, I can learn," she said. But then Anne's mother shouted over from the clothesline where Margaret was helping her. "Don't you let her fire that gun. It's bad enough you got her mowing the lawn and using the sickle to clear the woods. You'll ruin her life. What man is going to want to marry someone who can shoot a .22? "I don't want to get married. I'm going to become a Carmelite nun when I grow up, just like Saint Teresa, who had to clean out all the cupboards because she was afraid of spiders. Nuns are married to God, and God doesn't care if I can shoot." The Carmelites lived their whole lives in the convent, never went out, never had to talk to anyone. They hardly ever talked to each other. And their boss, the Mother Superior, was very, very kind and never, ever yelled at them or hit them. "Anne, get away from that gun or I'll shoot you myself," her mother shouted. Later, Tommy had a rocket he was allowed to set off while their father watched. It made a blast-off noise, whistled, spit fire, and shot way up into the air. It was even better than the water rockets Tommy had, and Anne was glad her mother and Margaret had gone back into the house. This holiday was special because they were going to a lake, which they hardly ever did on a holiday on account of all the crowds. Anne's father always wore his bathing suit under his pants, but Tommy, little brother Benny, and Anne all changed in the car after they put towels up in the windows. Anne's mother had said, "I don't care if you're too cheap to pay for the changing rooms. Margaret and I are not changing in that car. Now give me the 50 cents. We'll meet you at the gate." At the lake, Anne's father rented a big yellow rubber boat that would fit them all. The kids paddled out into the lake and took turns throwing each other out of the boat. Despite getting water in their eyes and that funny feeling when a kid can't tell if the water is in their throat or in their nose, and having to take help from Margaret to get back into the boat, Anne was having a good time. Then, when it was time for their picnic supper, Anne's father had to drive to the lakeside store because of something they forgot. "And take all those kids with you. Give me some peace," Anne's mother had shouted. So they went along. Tommy got a big Coke with money he saved up from his allowance, and they were sitting in the station wagon as Anne's father backed out of the crowded parking lot. Anne saw that Tommy had scrunched down in the seat and his ears were turning red. She wondered why until she saw that there were some big kids, like at least in high school, sitting on the wooden parking lot fence, which looked just like the ones in the Westerns. They were talking and smoking cigarettes, and Anne knew Tommy didn't want to be seen with his family. That's when it happened. Ann's father backed the car right into a telephone pole. Ann screamed. Margaret grabbed Benny, who had started to fly off the seat. Ann's father said something nobody could quite hear, and Tommy's Coke flew up into the air and came spilling down into his lap. Then the big kids on the fence started laughing and shouting stupid stuff, like about how her dad was an old man who couldn't drive. Ann looked at her father carefully. He wasn't an old man. Her grandfather was an old man, and her great-grandfather was so old he was dead. Ann started to worry. What would her father do? Would he yell at those big kids? Would he get into a fight like in the Westerns? But he just laughed and turned to Margaret, Tommy, Ann, and Benny and said, "They're just kids, bored, having a laugh. I was the same." Ann couldn't understand. Her father wasn't an old man, but he was never a kid either. Ann put that away with all the other things she kept that she needed to figure out later. Her father turned to Tommy. "No harm done, nothing we can't fix. You can go jump in the lake and wash that Coke off." Later at home, there were sparklers. Even Ann's mother liked those. They all ran around the yard, making pictures in the sky. It was even better than the fireflies they caught and put in jars. The next day, after church, Ann watched her father use the rubber mallet to carefully pound the dent out of the station wagon, a tiny bit at a time. The end.
Great, thanks, Kathy. That was wonderful. You can tell the time period by the fact that the car didn't all fall apart when it backed into a telephone pole. Nowadays, I think they're built just fall into pieces at one impact. Super. Thank you. Great characterization again, as always. Love it. All right, our next reader is from beautiful Port Alberni. Vicki Drybrough is going to share, I'm guessing, some fiction with us. Are you, Vicki?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. All right. So Vicki's a local fiction writer and poet from Port Alberni, co-author of both sides now with me and Libby Moore. So all yours, Vicki. Go ahead.
What I'm going to read tonight is an excerpt from the first part of my novel. It takes place in the late 50s. The narrator is 9 years old, and she meets Crazy Eddie for the first time. Crazy Eddie. In early October, Miss Pennyfield banged on Ina Braddock's door, her screams drowning out the radio in the kitchen. When Ina let her in, she fell into a chair and between sobs, managed to say a ghost had come to her yard, dressed like an old-fashioned sea captain. He moaned and called out while he paced back and forth with his head half hanging off his neck as he pointed a pistol at her. Ina gave her a small glass of brandy, and she eventually calmed down. By then, Miss Pennyfield wasn't sure if the ghost's head was hanging or just sitting crooked on his neck. And it might not have been a pistol, but a compass he was holding. The more she thought about it, he could have been a miner holding a lamp. Word spread, and soon everyone was talking about the ghost that had chased Miss Pennyfield, and she barely escaped with her life. A few nights later, Mr. Jempson reported hearing moaning sounds, and when he opened the door, his cat, Archie, flew into the house with a shriek and hid under the bed. Everyone was on high alert. Chores were finished before dark, wood pulled inside so there would be no need to open the door. Chickens were put to bed early, and people brought their dogs inside for protection. "It's dumb," said Sam. "Ghosts can walk through walls." She saw a ghost, not a prowler. "Hetty's not exactly reliable," said my mother as she stirred the stew bubbling on the stove. "She might have seen a prowler and thought he was a ghost." "What would a prowler be doing up here? The marina's at the other end of the island. There's nothing to steal up here." "People aren't sure what they're afraid of," said my mother. "They just want some comfort and reassurance." "Well, I think it's dumb." Sam wandered off to his room. I went to stand beside my mother. "Do you believe in ghosts?" She turned and looked me in the eye. No, I don't. I believe people see what they imagine. If you believe long enough and hard enough that there are bears in the bush, you will probably convince yourself that you've seen one. Doesn't mean there really are bears in the bush. I nodded, but couldn't help wondering as I set the table what had scared Miss Pennyfield and Archie. Friday after school, Gordy and Lance had me cornered behind the post office in a short driveway where the mail truck parked on weekdays. The tires had churned the ground into a wide hole filled with mud, sloppy now after yesterday's rain. Gordy and Lance were pelting me with mud balls, one right after the other. Ha ha, gotcha, you dumb little shit. Yeah, you pile of shit. There was mud in my hair, on my face, and all over my clothes. I was trapped between the pile of old junk Mr. Watson had dumped there over the years and the wall of the post office. Lance lobbed another one, but I managed to duck. Gordy could throw harder and landed a big one on my shoulder that exploded all over my jacket. It was nearly supper time, already dark under the trees. I just wanted the two of them to go away so I could escape and get home before dark. A noise started nearby in the bushes, a whining, howling, growling kind of noise. Twigs snapped and the bushes began to shake. Gordy and Lance dropped their mud balls and took off. I was rooted to the spot with fear. The noise stopped and I could hear a cackling, high-pitched laughter. Crazy Eddie stepped out of the bushes. Hi, he said with a big grin on his round face. They are not very nice boys. I had seen Eddie on the ferry with his parents and a few times at the post office. He hardly ever said anything. He hung back behind his mother. When he did speak, he sounded like a little kid, even though my mother told me he was older than Sam. Thank you, I said. They had me trapped. You're welcome. I have a new camera. He was carrying a brownie box camera, which he pointed toward me. I stood perfectly still until he clicked the button. Then I grinned at him because he was the friendliest ghost I could possibly imagine. He grinned back at me, and his smile was like the sun. Thank you.
And thank you, Vicki. That was great. Wonderful. Crazy Eddie. Okay. All right, on to Joe Lunchbucket, or better known as Bob Frankow, for our next reader. And Bob hails from Port Alberni as well. He's our local, what we call him, our local curmudgeon. And Bob is live in Char's Landing, going to come up to the microphone now. Come on, Bob. There he is. All right. Bring him on, bring him on. Okay. Okay, we're not hearing that mic yet.
Can you hear me?
Now we got you. Okay, we're good to go now, Bob. Go ahead, man.
Okay. Invaders, bloodied green arable inhabited shores, raiding, raping, plundering all their resource stores. A century later, even more ruthless conquerors came and vanquished those that to First Nations did the same. In nature, territory is disputed. It's a right of might. Victor takes all. In retreat, loser forfeits all right. Every aggressor ceded the pool, and nation was steeled in war. Underdogs before, they swore Britons be slaves no more. Unified in language and faith, the world they sought to get, carved continents for an empire on which the sun never set. The meek inherit ice and sand, victors their resources gain. Stone Age technology, Guns and steel couldn't restrain. Overpopulation spurs exploration and natural selection. Those without immunity are culled by new viral infection. Can Canadians remain ruling class and ward off barbarian invasion, or be displaced by universities' top grads that are mostly Asian? Will Earth too self-rule with ET and their missionaries contest? Even if they bring peace and raise our living standards, will we protest and feel oppressed because there's no such thing as benevolent conquest? Okay, that's one of them. Take me to your leader. We come in peace, will they say. Will their missionaries bring a holy book and seize our land as we pray? Will they only acknowledge intellect and step on us like we on ants? Or will they see possibility and utilize us as a bank of transplants? Will they, like slavers, deny us education and divide nation against nation? Or like US, gift us pox-infected blankets? Will they exact decimation? Will they settle all international disputes to make hostility cease? Eliminate disease and hunger so we won't need soldiers and police. India's practice of burning widows was banned under British rule. Conquerors received no gratitude, were ousted and faced ridicule. Britain lost crown jewel. Pakistan's secession ignited religious fuel. Will our generation acknowledge ET advanced civilization, benefited from their technology and tax breaks, but reject assimilation? Will we be grateful for having been shown a better way? Or like all vanquished nations, yearn for Independence Day?
Always cheer me up, Bob.
Yeah, right. Been watching too much of the news about the ET revelation, not the ET, well, the that are going on now down in the States. And yeah, it's thought-provoking for sure. So I guess that brings it down to me, the last reader. I'll just remind you before I about etransfer at charslanding.com if you're feeling generous. Always appreciate a little bit of help to keep Char's doors open there. And I thought what I'm working on right now is kind of, I couldn't really pull anything out that I wanted to excerpt from it. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll pull something from an earlier book. So I went back and selected a little short piece of historical fiction, which kind of fits with a lot of what was being read tonight. So so that's just pure happenstance. But anyway, that's what it is. So this is book, Ginger Goodwin, Beyond the Forbidden Plateau, which is loosely based on what happened to the labor leader Ginger Goodwin, who was shot on Vancouver Island in 1918 after leading a lengthy strike and being conscripted to go to World War I and hiding out up on the Forbidden Plateau. And he was tracked down up there and shot. And this is from, the book's written from 7 different characters' points of view, and it just kind of alternates back and forth between them. So this one is from, who is this one? It's about Sam Clark. And Sam Clark is kind of somebody who's in favor of Ginger Goodwin, but the narrator here is really kind of anti-Ginger Goodwin and anti-union and everything. So he's talking about the time that Sam Clark got knocked over by a runaway cart and pinned against the wall in a coal mine, and that's where this takes place. It says, well, old Sam struggled for a while, but he soon realized he was wasting his strength. Besides, he was bust up pretty good. Not that that would have stopped him if it had been at all possible for him to budge that cart. He knew the next shift was due along at any minute, and they'd free him up quick enough. They were sure never to let both shifts in the mine at one time. That way, if something happened, there was always one shift round to dig the other one out. Mind you, there was also one shift. Anyway, was just starting to think on having a nap when he heard the claws of that rat out of the cart. Maybe that's what set the thing in motion in the first place. Now, there's not a heck of a lot for those rats to eat down below besides the odd lunch scrap or a chunk of bootlace. Rumor had it they lived off each other, but I couldn't say that for certain. Like most things, I figured, they lived off whatever was smaller and dumber than themselves. Anyway, this was a scrawny little beast, and its eyes yellow in the glow of Sam's lamp. It went straight for the light, no doubt drawn by the smell of the fish oil it burned. Sam claims that rat blew his lamp out, but it's more likely it went out when the cart hit him or when you want to look at it. Now, you've never seen darkness till you've been underground without a lamp. Then it's as if that darkness pushed. Then slowly it crowds in on your face and your neck and shoulders, till finally you feel like you're swimming in a pail of black paint. That's when your ears latch on to the tiniest sound and blow it all out of whack. So it was that Sam lay in the dark and listened to the slurp of that rat's tongue as it lapped up the oil in his lamp. Didn't take him long and he had that lamp licked clean. The next thing Sam knows, that rat scurried right up on his chest. He can't see him, but he can feel his paws poking at his shirt collar, and he can smell the fish oil in the little devil's breath. Well, old Sam let out a roar to make a lion piss, and that rat hit the ground about 4 feet away with his paws flailing. Sam figured he might be able to get some shut-eye now, but it wasn't a minute later he feels a little pest scampering back up on his chest. This time he feels its greasy little whiskers tickling his nose, and it starts to squeak like it's getting excited. About then, Sam starts to think it might be getting ready to make a meal of his face. Its wet nose press up against his cheek, and that's when he made his move. With his mouth open and chomped down for all he was worth, well, I guess the next squealing from a half a mile off. By the time they got to Sam, he was snoring like a bear. When they went to pry the cart off of him, one of the men found the tip of a rat's nose collieries where Sam had spit it out. Sam went to skinning mules after that. I guess they figured he had a way with animals. Now, I can't help but wonder what would have happened to Ginger Goodwin. I figured he'd have fainted like some woman and given that rat a free meal. Of course, he wouldn't have charged that runaway cart neither. They'd likely have found him run over in the middle of the track, whimpering about his blessed unions. Short and sweet. All right. So thank you everyone who came tonight and read, and those of you who came to listen, and especially thanks to our featured readers. So to Catherine and Catherine MacDonald and Doug Whiteway came to us from Winnipeg and shared from their mysteries. Really enjoyed those readings tonight. And thank you to those who just tuned in to listen. Even I don't know if there are anybody left now, but anyway, it's always great to have you folks come along and listen in. Thank you, of course, to Char, our Zoom host, for making this run so smoothly. And track, there you are, Char. Hello, hello, with Luma in the background. And thanks to Jackie for being our artistic director and lining everybody up. And thank you to Karl, our moderator, for rolling there. And I see you had to move outside. I guess it's still hot in Regina, eh?
Yes. But I got my feet in the, making sure my computer stays on my lap, and my feet are in a little kiddie pool, so it's awesome. I get to relax in the nice pool.
Yeah.
Getting eaten by mosquitoes, but hey, well, that's okay. I'll go inside eventually when it's over.
Yeah, well, that's Regina. That's Canada. We can't have Canada without mosquitoes.
Yes, it is Canada, but not Port Alberni. No mosquitoes in Port Alberni.
Yeah. So are you going to be back in Port Alberni for the next one then in August, Karl?
Yeah. I fly out first for Valdi, so I will be
All right.
back in Port Alberni in August.
Sounds good. And we've got some interesting, we've got Kate McDermott, who's author of The Art of the Pie, is going to be one August. The other one, our second writer, had to cancel here. So a little bit up in the air, but we've got a few people in line here. So Jackie's going to make sure that that gets taken care of.
Yes. Jackie does a great job of getting backup people for us.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. So thanks again to everyone for tuning in to us here on the Zoom, and thanks to our featured readers, and thanks to everyone on the open mic scene. And so until next time, everybody stay safe.
Stay well. Stay well.
Yes, and thank you to Derek, our MC.
Hey, Derek.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, it's the highlight of the month for me. I get to see a whole bunch of people. It's really good.
Yeah, and getting to meet a lot of new people too. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we'll probably hang around to chat if you feel like chatting. Otherwise, I think this Electric Mermaid is about done for July.
All right. Stay well, everybody.
Yeah, you too, Jackie. Everybody.
Take good care.
Stay cool out there, guys, in BC.
Yeah, well,
You got cool weather, so it's good.
It just like I came back from camping yesterday, and I think we just timed it perfectly. It was beautiful. We were out the lake, and yeah, you could feel the change happening yesterday. It was still sunny, but it's just like, oof, man, yeah. Gotta
Yeah,
go
no, it does happen. I know before I left, I couldn't believe in the mornings. I'm like, what's going on here? It's so cool. I'm like, it feels like August almost back when I was there at home.
How is it in Ontario, Jennifer? Heat descended yet on London, or is it?
We had some back several days. We had some really warm weather. This week it's been a lot cooler. Today I think it only got up to, well, yesterday was 28 or 9 or something. Today.
Oh well, yeah. That's good. Yeah.
It's been all right.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, stay cool. We'll hope to see you again next month, Jennifer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'll probably sign off and go to bed. And I know that Karl said something about September.
Yes, you're on September. I think Joy's my August, and then you're my September. 10 minutes.
Okay.
We'll look forward to that.
Terrific.
Yeah, I love the compression of your prose that you read tonight, man. That was really good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's if you look it up in where it's been published, it's a poem in the form. It's sort of, I call it a ballad, and it's it's in a poem, but
really nice.
Verse, kind of.
Really nice.
Yeah. Great way to tell a story. Yeah.
Thank you. Night, night.
Night, night.
Take care.
Yeah. We can't hear you, Char.
Char, you're muted.
You're muted, darling.
A lot going on in this room. Good night, everybody. Another great night. Thank you. Good to see you. Yeah.
I'm now gonna go get some food, hopefully something to eat, and get out of these bug bites.
Yeah. And Lori's here. Did Lori talk on the mic?
Oh, hi, Lori.
Oh, did she say hi? Here.
Hi,
Lori, I think you got a twin, because I was on the plane, and this person in front of me from behind looked like you, and I know, no, can't be Lori, and it wasn't. It was weird.
Well, I'll be on a plane soon. I'm going back to school for August.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So
Whereabouts is school, and what are you taking?
in France, it's a theater school that specializes in clown.
Clowns, yes, fantastic. Wow. Good
Oh,
on.
I am happy to be going back and to be reunited with my belongings, which we were separated during the pandemic. So all my things are still over there.
Oh, wow. Well, you'll enjoy your time there and flying.
Thank you. I'll see you in September. It's nice to see you all there.
Yes, good to see you out here from all the way from Saskatchewan. I am right now.
Good journeys to you.
What?
We'll miss you, Lori.
Yes.
Yes, well, I look forward to getting back and coming and doing some more work here, and
Yeah.
nice to sit out and have a pint on the patio earlier. So
Nice.
yeehaw.
Good for you. Well, when you get back in September, we'll have a pint together.
Mhm.
Yay. And we'll get her, I guess, as a clown on the stage for our electric mermaid, right?
Yeah,
That'll be interesting.
We'd love that.
you can totally do it. There's
Bye.
Gonna be-
Lori.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Good job, Char.
Yeah.
Good job, Carl. Carl, you flew in and you got her done. Way to go.
I know it's
Yeah,
scary. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
way to go.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go now. So
Yeah.
we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. Good
Bye-bye.
job. Good night. Good night.